America's divided. We've gone from simple policy disagreements to really disliking and even dehumanizing the other side. We're very angry today. Students, also angry. Some with good reason, for sure. Some people would say that students can't think critically about moral issues, can't have conversations about things that really matter, right? They say young folks are snowflakes today, right? They can't engage across important lines of difference. I think this is entirely false, right? Students are not like this. I teach a class called The Science of Moral Understanding, where students come in and they have really good conversations about really contentious issues. They talk to their classmates about abortion, race in America, euthanasia, taxes. And not only do they have conversations with each other, they go out into the community and engage with their friends, their families, their roommates, their coworkers, right? So students are hungry and excited for these conversations if they have the right framework. And so in this class, what I teach them are skills for better conversations, right? Tips for engaging, knowing how to have these conversations. It's important for the real world, but it's more than that. They learn a deeper understanding, the science of who we are, human nature, how we think, and the science of the best way to bridge divides, right? So it's not just the skills, it's also the deeper science for understanding why those skills are what they are. And because this was so helpful for students, getting out there into a polarized world, I wanted to benefit more folks, and so I wrote the book OUTRAGED. Again, with two main goals. One, practical goals for better conversations, better discussion, whether that's with your mother-in-law or your coworkers or folks on social media. I wouldn't recommend that mostly. And new science of human nature, of how we think about morality and how to bridge divides. Now, so one motivation for writing this book is really about the data. So I'm a scientist. I run lots of studies in my lab. And all these data kind of pointed to a new understanding of how we make moral judgments. And so that's kind of at the center of the book. But also, I had another motivation, which is that when I was 5, my dad married my stepmom, who's pictured in the back, and like creepily smiling at the window maybe. And I went down and visited this family, my stepmom's family. They're in Nebraska. It's a very big family, very conservative, very evangelical. And they opened their arms to me, despite the fact that as a Canadian, I was a foreigner and a stepkid. And they were so, so kind. And it seemed like I had everything in common with my cousins. We liked playing in the hayloft, and we liked swimming in the pond. Everything in common. And then as we got older, it was clear we had less in common, especially when it came to hot-button moral issues. All right, we disagreed about things like gay rights. But what I couldn't do, because I knew they were good people, was that just dismiss them as being evil or stupid, as many people do in America, right? Dismiss the entire other side, right? I knew they were kind people. And so I wondered, well, how can we disagree even though, right, we're all caring people? And so it's really about why we fight about morality in politics and how we can make it better. First, I think we need to point out a key myth, and one that's popular on social media, and that is that the other side is out to get you, right? That the other side is trying to hurt you. This is not true, right? There's a myth that we hold in our minds, and that is what I call the destruction narrative. When we think about the other side, we think that they're like some Marvel supervillains bent on destruction, right? They just want to burn the world down. This is not how people think. This is not how people act. When people make their moral judgments, when people vote in a particular way, it's to protect themselves and society and those they see as vulnerable. When you vote, right, for a candidate, when you vote for something or make a moral judgment, it's not because you're trying to burn the world down. It's because you're trying to protect someone or something. And of course, we get outraged. But why do we get outraged? Well, we get outraged because we feel vulnerable to harm, because we're worried about protection. And then you think, well, why do we feel so vulnerable today? Well, it comes back to human nature, ultimately. So we have this image in our mind of us in history as these like apex predators. Maybe we're apex predators today. and maybe we were in recent history. But for millions of years, as we evolved, we were not apex predators, right? We were more hunted than hunted. This is a real skull that they found in South Africa of Australopithecus from 4 million years ago, right? We mostly were worried about getting eaten for millions of years, and we still have this fear kind of innately. And of course, we're not afraid of wild animals anymore, mostly, but we are still afraid of predators, just people who might be immoral, right? So if your kids are playing outside and you see a white panel van drive slowly up and down the street, you don't think, oh, it's a lost locksmith. I hope they find where they're going. You don't think that, right? You think this is a kidnapper, right? They're out to get us. And so we continue to see threats in the world. And so when someone makes a moral judgment that you disagree with, you have to ask yourself, what harms do they fear? What threats are they worried about? Consider something like guns, right? If you're pro-gun control, the harms you're worried about are maybe school shootings. And if you're pro-gun rights, the harms you're worried about maybe defending yourself and your family. Right? So everyone's focused on protection. Now, it's easy to assume that liberals and conservatives, because we disagree, that we have fundamentally different moral minds deep down. But lots of research from my lab and that of others recently suggests that this is a myth. We don't have fundamentally different minds, even if we kind of talk about different key words, even if we maybe seem to emphasize different values at times. We all share the same moral minds, and we're all focused on preventing harm. Every moral judgment we make revolves around harm. But here's the thing. Harm is a matter of perception, right? Is marijuana something that helps you unwind after a long day, or is it destroying the fabric of American society? That's a matter of perception. And in fact, every moral issue that we have that we disagree about is about perceptions of harm, different perceptions of harm. So another way to say it is that we all worry about harm and protecting people, protecting the vulnerable, but we disagree about which victims are most vulnerable to harm. And the book goes into a lot of detail about how different people see different victims and why. One example, take the debate about abortion. If you're progressive, you're maybe worried about women and their reproductive rights, right? You're perceiving those potential victims. If you're more conservative, you're worried about protecting fetuses, right, and their well-being. And so understanding kind of moral divides is allowed by understanding the harms that people see. And so because we're all concerned about harm, because all our moral judgments revolve around protecting victims, once you understand the kind of harms that people see, it provides common ground for having conversations and building empathy. And it's especially important to think about this in today's era of fake facts. And why? Well, we asked many, many Americans, including students, how best should we bridge divides? What should someone say in a conversation to make you respect them? And what do people say? They say, just give me the facts. I just want the facts, no editorializing, just give me the facts. Great. We say, here are the facts from the other side. And people say, not those facts. Those are not the right facts, right? We have such different facts because we live in different media and social media ecosystems. So they don't convince. And even if you agreed on those facts, it's not the right kind of thing, at least to say in an argument at first about morality. Like, take these people. Is one more fact that make the difference? Hey, here's something I heard on NPR, and here's something I heard on Fox News. You throw a fact at the other person, and they're like, oh my goodness, you're right. Like, think back to your conversations about morality and politics. I don't know, Thanksgiving, whatever, on the plane, when someone's like, here's a fact you didn't know, and you're like, you know what? Wow. I guess I'm going to change my stance on immigration because that was a good fact. No, that never happens, right? Instead of hurling facts at each other, the way to bridge divides is to share personal experiences of harm, right? Connect with others about the suffering that we are concerned about. So we ran this in the lab. We had folks, including students, have a conversation about guns. And they used either facts, like this is how many times guns are used in self-defense in America, or a personal story, like someone's mom used a gun to defend themselves from a home invader. And it's the story that built respect that allowed people to be kinder to each other. And so even if we disagree about people's moral judgments, we can still understand when people try to protect themselves from harm. Now, of course, facts matter. I'm a scientist, right? There's lots of facts in this book. Facts matter. But they're not the best way for starting these conversations, right? For perceiving where other people and making sense of where they're coming from. So again, facts do matter, right? We're all concerned about facts. But understanding the fact, in a sense, that all our moral judgments revolve around harm really helps students understand where people are coming from on the other side, allowing them to have better conversations. In fact, it helps us all understand, right? Recognizing this research helps me have better conversations and relationships with my family, even though we might disagree about a number of issues. And so look, polarization is not going away. It's going to be here for the next 4 years and probably for a while after that. But the outrage that we feel almost on a daily or hourly basis, right, isn't inevitable. Not for us in this room, not for kind of average Americans, right? We can understand where people are coming from. This doesn't mean we should give up our moral convictions, right? Or students should give up their moral convictions. No. I think it's so important that you hold fast to your beliefs. But it does mean that we can understand where folks are coming from, build coalitions, and affect social change that way, right? By creating this kind of coalitions and understanding across lines of difference. And so outrage is inevitable for those of us in this room. It's also not inevitable for students who can learn not only the skills, but also the science for effectively engaging across lines of differences and flourishing in a polarized world. Thanks very much.